Okay, now before I go forward, I'm going to go a little bit backwards in my conversation. Yesterday, the day before, I gave a presentation, and it included a lot of spinescent Australian native succulent plants. Also, too, I did try to emphasise or convey that we've got a lot of introduced species, both spinescent cacti as well as poisonous succulents. So, you know, Australia's environment is changing and evolving, and I also showed this, the representing the Cactaceae family, and on the left side you've got the Euphorbiaceae family. What's interesting there is I wanted to emphasise that, you know, which would win in a competition, like if you were to say in a boxing ring, on this corner we have the Cactaceae and the Euphorbiaceae on the left side, but which would win in a competition? It so happens it's worth pointing out that in Australia, cacti are not illegal to import. Only opuntias are illegal. But in Australia, all euphorbias are illegal because they not only have thorns or spines, they have poison, the combination of which outcompetes even the Cactaceae. So if there was a competition, there's supporting evidence to indicate that the Australian government fears euphorbias more than they fear the Cactaceae and the spines. Just a bit of trivia for you, but anyway, moving on. Okay, I also showed, I had some questions after my talks, some questions, and one in particular bothered me because the question was, you showed Australian euphorbias, but were they native? Yes, they are. They're all native. And the person who asked the question first, I was surprised that I didn't actually mention that they were native. But of course, euphorbias are poisonous, so likely that colourful succulent, that smaller one to the left of the image, was likely to be trodden on by an animal or eaten at some point in the future, but the euphorbia is likely going to spread further across the landscape. And if you were to ask me what species of euphorbia it was, well, you know, I couldn't find the sign beneath it, so, you know, it didn't help me much at all. Now, I also, just going back over the past, I pointed out before, and I just got to do it again, most of my work is with Michelle, so thank you, and hello, Michelle. Got to acknowledge her. She's integral to most of my work, and I'm often venturing into arid regions of the continent, and most of my time is working with really isolated places, but there are things that we come across that are very interesting. But apart from the arid regions, there are sometimes mountain ranges that, even in the arid regions, small mountain ranges, modest mountain ranges, where you can find cycads in succulent habitat. So while looking for succulent plants, cycads aren't considered succulents, but we have them as honorary succulents. They are xerophytes, they like it dry, they grow in similar conditions, so we find we can grow them together with our cacti and succulents. But this is a typical succulent habitat in the centre of Australia. I'm exploring this canyon, and it's an unusual place, but we'll come back to that in a minute, the same scene, and discuss it. But I just wanted to show you a central Australian canyon in an arid desert region, but look at that, beautiful cycads there. We'll cover what its name is. Now, a little bit more, some technical things I will be covering in a little bit for a short period, but then we're going to go into beautiful pictures, beautiful plants, and hopefully it'll come down to and I'll get faster and faster later. What do we all recognise that identifies a cycad? Well, they're often considered palm-like. I accept that. They're often considered fern-like. Oh, I accept that. But they're not palms, they're not ferns, and they're not related. So what are they related to? Well, there you've got ferns in the foreground and cycad in the background, shiny, more leathery the leaves are, so that's an obvious indicator. But the primary thing that separates cycads from any other plant group is, one is they're said to be prehistoric and they coexisted with dinosaurs. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute, no one is, that it was food for dinosaurs, but likely they were eaten by some of the creatures that existed at the time. And it's a romantic notion that we have that cycads were prehistoric and coexisted with dinosaurs. They've hardly evolved through history, so they're pretty ancient. So it's an ancient group of plants. Now, this is from a Cycad Society website, and this shows the approximate distribution of cycads around the world. And you'll notice, Australia has the green section mostly around the perimeter. So that's an important thing to consider. So it's not so much in the arid interior as it is in the perimeter where it's more fertile and wet. Now, Australia has approximately 75 species. 3 families, Cycadaceae, Strangeraceae, Zamiaceae, and 4 genera, Bowenia, Cycads, Lepidozamia, and Macrozamia. Now, again, I just got to re-emphasise, these aren't from arid zones, they're from fertile zones on the continent, but only on the perimeter. And on that perimeter, whether it's in the west or in the east, there are still outcrops of rocks and sandy, stony hills where water runs off, flushes away, drains really well. So it's still considered arid in comparison to... Now, the most important thing that identifies one cycad from another, visually, the most observable thing, if you were walking amongst cycads, the easiest thing to tell one species, one genus apart from another is the reproductive features of the plant. So that's very, very important. I go down into some detail to look at what identifies a cycad, reproductive feature. Now, this is a typical flower of a plant, just a flower. And there's all sorts of aspects. There's petals and sepals and all sorts of things. But the most important thing is there's an ovary in the middle with seeds inside. Now, I'm going to skip that little science thing, but that's called an angiosperm. All flowering plants are angiosperms. Flowering plants are considered to be modern, not ancient like cycads. But this is an AI manufactured picture, by the way. So it's a bit odd that there's lava under the feet of the dinosaur. But now, here we have a cycad, an Australian cycad, and it's actually in full reproductive mode. But I don't see anything that's identifiable in the way of reproduction. I can see perhaps from a glance, are they fruit, nuts, seeds? What are all the parts to that? Well, this is actually referred to, instead of an angiosperm, the flowering plant, because it's not a flowering plant, they're called a gymnosperm. Gymnosperms have no flowering parts. So what do they have? If an angiosperm has this, what does a cycad have? It has cones, like a pine cone. And it might seem odd. How on earth are they related to pine trees and with pine cones? What similarities could they possibly have? Well, these are just assorted pine cones I'm showing you, but this is now a cycad cone. And this is a cycad cone that is dioecious. So you know only too well that that refers to a plant either being male or a plant being female. You can't have male and female reproductive features on the same plant. Now, this is a male plant, and this is a male plant of a cycad. So I'm not giving you the species at the moment. There's a reason for that. This is also a male, and this is a male. Michelle's hand, a giant cone. The cones and the reproductive aspects of cycads are the most important. This is a pine cone. Notice how it's opening up its segments. This cycad is also opening up all its segments of the cone. So there's that similarity. And if you look closer, you can actually see there's a lot of interesting things. A pine cone opens up from the bottom and sort of like peels all its segments, opens gently, and so does a cycad. So that's a little bit of a petty thing. But let's look closer. What sort of reproductive parts actually function on the plant? Close examination of the apex. This is a male plant again. You might see what look like eggs, fish eggs, insect eggs, those white things in the top. Now, let's go closer. We'll have to go much closer. Can you see where the arrow's pointing? For those in the front row, you'll see it. They are actually pollen sacs. And that's actually pollen sacs there too. So this cone, this male cone, has pollen sacs, but has not yet released pollen. Now, at the bottom of that same cone, there's now white powder. You can see it near my fingers, and you can see it. See that arrow's pointing to white powder sprinkled from the top? That's the pollen sprinkling out of the cone, sprinkling out onto the ground. So that's a male cone. Now, the males don't last too long with their cones, so that's a male plant. And the cone is being pushed to one side. Now, this is a female plant of the same species. even though that doesn't look like a cone, that's the equivalent cone on a female specimen. Now, what do we recognise on it? Because again, it's in reproductive mode. You've got that top section, and it's pretty difficult to interpret what we're looking at, but yes, they are seeds developing there. But what part of the plant is that? Well, it so happens that when a female plant is fertilised with pollen, you've got these segments that spread widely and stay on the plant for many, many months. Now, the male cone gets pushed to one side. You can see all the leaves rising up, new shoots, a whole new burst of growth, and you see the male cone pushed to one side. It's now irrelevant. It's not needed anymore, okay? But with a female, they seem to last for up to a year, all those parts. Let's just quickly look at stem or trunk, a closer look. Cycads, what identifies a cycad? What trunk feature? Well, it's not so much woody, it's not really hard inside, and it is a lot of water, moisture in there, but it's actually very thick, and we refer to it as a cortex. So that's something we have in common. So it's not really like a tree. They're usually solitary stemmed. This one's branching, but you can clearly see bands. Each band indicates a year's growth and a reproductive cycle in there. Close up of a cycad stem, you'll notice what looks like leaf marks or stubs. They're actually the stubs of old leaves, and the stubs are highly succulent, and they remain on the plant forever, and they provide additional support and are an important part of the supporting structure to keep them upright, otherwise they'll collapse. That's why I say there's no real wood in there. Now, another thing about Australian cycads, we've got lots of characters that really are quite interesting. This is actually a closer look at spination. We're talking about very spiny central sections, and it looks very much like a cactus. It's kind of like a really, really vicious, they're very sharp. But what is that? You know, those things you were looking at, those spiky bits, they're all leaves. I'll move on from science in a minute, but notice the 3 green leaves in the back still attached to the trunk. Where they're attached, you can clearly see there's some leaves that have now shed, and you can see red colouring. It's highly succulent, but that red flesh when it's exposed. But that white thing on the top, they're like scales. They're spiny scales, and they are actually highly modified leaves. If you notice the base of the leaf on the right-hand side, the base of the leaf is also white. It's transitioning, but it'll peel away, and all those white spiky scales will also peel away, because they're actually all leaves, just different types of leaf modifications. So that's just, now, so you can clearly see that white and green transition. That's actually, the white scales are referred to botanically as a cataphyll, not a leaf, a cataphyll, but they're still leaves. The cataphyll, you can see at the bottom there, that provides an important function in protecting the apex. So that cataphyll, all that structure there, is designed to actually protect what's about to come out, whether it's the male reproductive cycle or the female reproductive cycle. So this plant has its protective cover on. Now, you could assume in the days of the dinosaurs, if these were a food supply, this actually keeps animals away, hopefully long enough for the plant to be able to reproduce very quickly and then move on in its route. So it's evolved to survive. But and now the top of the plant, the reproductive part, that's actually, each segment there is called a microsporophyll. On a female, it's quite different. This is the female equivalent, Australian Cycas armstrongii. And if you have a look there, there's, instead of a microsporophyll, it's a megasporophyll. Now, I know that sounds a bit like, oh, what a mouthful, what a waste of time. But those segments in the top, when they reach a certain stage, they start to flare out in all directions. And when they do, each of those sections is actually a leaf. A leaf. You wouldn't believe it. They're green underneath, and it's a leaf. Even though botanically it's referred to as a megasporophyll, that thing is a leaf. And the seeds actually develop on the leaf. If you don't believe me, this is again Australian cycads. If you have a look at the top, apart from the lovely, lovely egg-sized like quail or quail eggs, the top of the sporophyll is actually quite leaf-like. Can you see what looks like a leaf? That's actually highly modified leaf. So cycads have lots of different types of leaf developments that function differently, provide a different function, but yeah, that's all they are. They're just a leaf. Now, true leaves, let's get into some more fun things. This is a cycad, typical leaf structure. You've got that there, you've seen before, bluish turquoise. A few exotic species. I'm getting faster now, so we're getting into the prettier things. So a few exotic species just to compare with what I'm going to show you when we get into some more native ones. So just some lovely things. So cycads are generally very interesting, but the reproductive cycle is the most interesting thing on cycads. For me anyway, I find them just absolutely spectacular when they can do this. But let's get into some native ones now and look at them in more detail, just how they look in habitat and all. We'll start off with Bowenia. Bowenia is a really unusual cycad. It lives in tropical far north Queensland, coastal, humid. It's quite a tropical species, but it has leaves that look like they're plastic. They feel like they're plastic. And the plant, this particular cycad, produces often one leaf. It's branched. But there's one stem, one petiole coming out of the ground. No sign of a trunk or a stem, just a single beautiful leaf. And it really does look and feel like plastic. It was very popular in the florist trade for many decades. Now, this is a cortex of that species dug out and exposed. Even in habitats, sometimes erosion and you've got them exposed, but an indication, and there's the old stub of a leaf you can see there on the lower left, but that's actually Bowenia. And the indigenous cultures in the past have utilised this as a food source, but they're also highly toxic, so be careful. 2 leaves on this one, 2 leaves, but they come straight from the ground. And the reproductive cycle, male. Yep, that's a male. I can see the pollen sacs at the top. See the pollen sacs all in between the sporophylls. Now, the same species, we've got only male plants on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, they're all females. So you can see the males on the left, 2 examples, and on the right, the females are smaller and closer to the ground. Most unusual, but that plastic shiny leaf, oh, I love it, love it, love it. Let's move on. Let's go to another, Cycas. I love Cycas. So we've looked at Bowenia. This is a Cycas species. I love it. It's called a silver cycad. The leaves are silvery, really silver. The picture perhaps doesn't convey the beauty of this species. It's not a huge species. It's really modest in size, good for a pot and in a garden. It's, oh, look at the colour, the contrast. Oh. And the new growth, it's beautiful, a really beautiful. Oh, by the way, the colour is as a result of what I'm referring to as indumentum. Indumentum is just like a covering, like a cloak. But in some cases, some species of cycad are pronose, they have a powder coating. Some cycads have a woolly coating on their leaves and stems. Some cycads have trichome-like coating. So, I'm just going to refer to it as an indumentum, which is a cloak or covering of some kind. And that's what gives it that silvery colour. And again, you can see there, beautiful silver colour. It's an exquisite species. Now, closer look at that, you can see that. So it's a white cloak. If you rub it hard, it just comes off. It's not too hard to... There's the same species. This is a male, and the reproductive organ is now gone limp on this male. But the female lasts for months to a year, still holding its seeds as it develops. Very fascinating species. So that's a silver cycad. It's absolutely superb. And when the new leaves come out, they're often stuck together like a feather, a bird's feather. Birds' feathers are much the same, but eventually they will open out fully. There's Cycas calcicola in the back, top right. That green one in the front is not one without the cloak, but it's another species, a neighbouring species that's often not found in the same habitat. So it's a good example. So there's your silver cycad at the top, and you've got the fire fern or Zamia palm below. But why would they call it a fire fern? Because it loves a fire. It loves a fire. Any kind of fire. Usually there's a dry season, and before the monsoonal tropical storms come in, there's often fires. And if not, the lightning from the monsoonal storms will start some fires. But a good fire is what this plant loves. It's one of our cycads that absolutely seems to benefit from fire every year. It likes regularly getting the habitat burnt. It clears away all the competition, and it's the first plant to bounce back. So, wow, it just comes out like so quick. Now, here you've got 3 plants of that particular cycas. We call it cycas. That's the genus. Cycas is a genus of cycads. So if I sound a bit funny in my conversation, because I'm trying to clarify, this genus is called cycas. Now, 3 plants, but different stages of development. But if we go closer, the most important aspect here is on the lower right, you'll see a big black stump of a tree that died. Cycads survived. All those 3 are healthy and about to go through various stages. There's a juvenile, lower cycad, and a reproductive one on the left, a female, obviously. But that dead tree, it couldn't compete within a fire. So cycads love to see all the neighbouring plants and trees burnt down, exposing them to greater sunlight and fertility. So these female plants, you can see here, the one on the left is just starting a new reproductive cycle, and then the one to its right has the female sporophylls spreading widely as all the new leaves burst forth. And that, in a matter of days or 2 weeks, a plant can be leafless to have a full crown. All the year's growth occurs in a matter of a few days to a few weeks. So, and then it waits, and for a whole year, those same leaves will have to last it until there's another fire. So, look at that. Oh, it's such a bright, beautiful species. Cycas armstrongii. It's a real survivor. And the trunk, the stem, is actually not that wide. It can be sometimes only 5 centimetres, which is only 3 inches or so in diameter. But it's a really beautiful species. It's small, it's modest in growth, but beautiful, beautiful cycad. I love it, love it, love it. Now, I have a problem a lot when I'm in these types of habitats, like that particular habitat. Every time I go there, I seem to have computer problems. My laptop plays up. Has anyone here ever had a computer bug? A computer bug in their computer? Well, I always have a problem here with computer bugs, and I seem to, I don't know what to do about it. But anyway, I'll give you an example of what happens. I don't suppose any of you have had this problem with your computer, have you? I'm out in the field and I'm trying to do work, and let me tell you, it's really, really, sometimes it's, anyway, I'm sorry. Oh, hello, Michelle. It's important to have scale. You can see it's not a huge cycad, and you can see the trunk is actually quite narrow. So, it's not a massive plant. And for the most part, the leaves are quite soft. So it's not a real spiky species either. Blue one. My God, that's stunning. It's one of my favorites. Cycas can. Oh, I left the best to last. So stay in your seats. It's found now. The first Cycas species I showed you was Cycas calcicola, and it's found where the yellow arrow is. The next species, that's Cycas armstrongii, is found just north. And Cycas kansiana is found near the town of Cairns, over here. So it's interesting, they're all in the north. Cycas are northerly in Australia, so none of them are found in the south. They're considered somewhat tropical, so that gives you an indication. But Cycas kansiana, named after the town of Cairns, but it's hundreds and hundreds of miles from the town. Oh, a male. Oh, a female. Even without the reproductive cones on, once you get the hang of it, you can identify the remains of old female parts, but you get to, and look at the habitat. It's stony, it's not very conducive to, being high, very good drainage on these rocky, stony plains. Female, obviously, that's very obvious. Again, looking at the female reproductive cycle, you can actually see the base of the leaves are spiny, the petiole, so where the leaves come close to the stem, you can see spination there, obviously, it's spinescent, and also the sporophylls, you can see right in the center of the image, there's a sporophyll and it's very spiny. That's just a modified leaf. You don't believe me, do you? They're a modified leaf. Once you get the hang of this, you say, I get that, I can see that now. And to the left, there's actually a tiny black indication of a seed that wasn't fertilized. Can you see that there? Those seeds look like eggs, like plover's eggs or dove's eggs. Cycads kanziana. And they do get quite large. They're not just, this is quite a large species, can get several meters in height. Beautiful in the landscape, absolutely superb. Cycads kanziana. Oh, that blue color. Now, it has a lot of interesting aspects to its leaves not being quite the same. From plant to plant, it can vary. And the leaves are quite arching, you can see an arching effect, but in some cases you find plants with really unique fluffy leaves, fluffy soft leaves. You sort of think, oh, that'd be nice in my collection. No one will have, I must dig that out. You know, people do that all the time and it's a real shame. But anyway, Cycads kanziana, superb species. You can see here too that the new growth is very blue, and at the lower area, there's actually green on the leaves. So yes, just like with the silver cycad, the blue can be rubbed off if you really rub hard with your hands. Now, another species. This is in the Cape York Peninsula of North Queensland, and this is called Cans yorkiana, after Cape York. And it's a beautiful species, also vibrant green when at fresh growth. So we showed the first three species of cycads. This is the fourth species up in the very north of, again, a tropical species. And while exploring these sorts of habitats, it can be really fun. And it's not always lime green. After and towards, especially towards the end of the growing cycle, the lime green does turn a darker shade of green, so they're not all that vibrant, but it's a soft, beautiful, beautiful cycas. You can see there one with fresh growth and one with older growth. Same species, it's just the variation in colour that's obvious within this species. Male, we know that now. A female, obviously, we can see that now too, for those in the front. Now, Michelle took this picture because that's my hand there. You know, it's good to have someone in for scale sometimes. And, you know, these are places we travel and visit to where you rarely come across anyone else in the field. Like, I mean, it's pretty remote. But, you know, on this occasion, you know, one occasion I met someone, there's someone's arms in there, and it's not Michelle. I don't know who that is. Actually, we met someone on one occasion. I said, hey, you. And I saw this person, and he was hobbling around. He seemed to have a knee that was giving him a bit of grief. We got chatting, and I said, you know, where are you headed? And he said he was heading north to look at cycads and ant plants and other interesting succulents. And I said, so am I. I said, do you want to come along? I can't leave you here hobbling around with your crook knee. So we decided to just get off, and soon we were and I thought, I know that person from somewhere. I'm sure I know that person. You know, for some reason, that face rings a bell. Anyway, we headed off together in the car. We were just taking turns, and we were stopping every 10 minutes or so. We didn't get very far every day, but, you know, we spent the next 10 days doing all sorts of things. And, you know, notably, we were looking up into the canopy of the cycads, looking for orchids and other things. And we were looking up in the trees, looking for epiphytes, looking for succulent plants that live as epiphytes. And one of the epiphytes that's common up there is a myrmecodia, and the ant plants, of course. I showed some the other day, but ant plants in the trees are common up this neck of the woods. Anyway, we're having a ball, and interesting. This one, I showed this the other day. It's very, very spiny. We must keep in mind, Australia does not have any spinescent succulent plants. Don't forget that, okay? There are no succulent plants that are spiny in Australia. So, you know, ignore this. Anyway, we'd be driving forward, and every so often I'd be driving, and sometimes this other fella would be driving. So we'd take turns. And, you know, this really, really was an exciting stop. And you know, I'll own up, it was Kelly. And Kelly said he actually had one of these plants himself. He grew from seed, and it grew almost as big as this. This was awesome. This was massive. But, you know, we're exploring trees. Kelly would look at that grin. And look at that green. Anyway, we're exploring the trees and looking for vines and things up in the trees. We're looking for something really rare, a succulent plant that's really rare. And I noticed this thing, and it's actually got thorns. If you look closer, can you see thorns on that lower section there? These bumpy things on this vine in the tree canopy has thorns. And you can see here too, that's a vine growing up a tree. And I thought, I wonder if it comes from a cortex. I wonder if there's a cortex underground. Look at that weird growth on the stem. I thought look at that there too. I'm thinking it's got a name. But that's a vine. But it seems to be having these protuberances that are quite bizarre. And they've got a spinescent nature to them. Now, this is a bottle tree, a brachychiton. And I'm still with Kelly somewhere. And you can see there's two different types of vines climbing up the brachychiton. We did notice and photograph things up in the trees that were interesting, but I also want to note that these vines and things were just so fascinating. Some of them really look like creatures. I mean, look at that. Can you see that? I mean, that really doesn't look natural. It looks quite bizarre. That's what we were looking for. That is incredible. And now, we pretty much mostly found dead ones, like on the right-hand side. The right-hand side shows dead ones. Kelly and I were wandering around in forest here, there, and everywhere, and we found dead ones, dead ones, dead ones. Finding a live one is really hard. By the way, the government asked me not to tell people where I found it, because you know why. I'm not going to tell you why, but collectors collect them, don't they? There's its name, Lechinoptera sinuosus, a really beautiful plant. Now, back to Cycads, because that's the topic here. This is, again, Cycas yorkiana, and there's a termite mound. I thought that's nice. The soil colour contrast, that red was really nice. In fact, not only there's narrow cyc, you can see there's other termite mounds amongst the cycads. So focus on the termite mounds for a minute, because some were huge, and we would stop the car as often for the plants as we would for the termite mounds. So we found it just as interesting, so I'm hoping you can also appreciate these termite mounds. And some of them were massive. These are called cathedral termite mounds, and these are still cathedral termite mounds. Oh, gosh, Kelly and I were just having such a ball. And these ones, this is another type of termite mound called the magnetic, because they often look like, to me, it looks like a cemetery with headstones. Can you see that? Can you get that perception that these are like headstones? Really, it's strange. They go north and south. It's a strange thing to see. Some of the headstones are being knocked over, just like cemeteries. Anyway, Kelly and I were having a ball. And, sometimes we didn't get very far. In any given day, we'd stop the car so many times. If we plan to go forward 10 kilometres and we end up being 20 kilometres in the other direction, it's because we're always stopping to do this sort of thing, exploring and looking at things. There was just so much to distract us. Again, more termite mounds. Oh, these are just multicoloured. Looks like, I don't know, but so appealing. Now, some of you may be wondering by now, well, we had a great time after 10 days, but we decided we've got to go back and find her. We're having too much of a good time. Well, there's Michelle. Hello, Michelle. And so it happens she's fine by herself, and she was doing all kinds of things by herself, having a good time. She loves termite mounds too. And on another occasion, just to point out something, Michelle's driving the car and she wanted to stop and pull over, and she did. And she said, I see something I really got to go visit. And she went over, she saw a termite mound, there it is. She wanted to go over, so I walked over with her, and she's just admiring that termite mound. And when she got over there, she said, I love it, I just love it. It's just so photogenic. I'm going to photograph it, stand next to it, or squat. And I did. She said, I'm sending this to the family, and I'm going to put a quote with it. I found a real-life poo emoji. Anyway, we're getting back to the car. We're slowly walking back, took lots of pictures. travellers, all sorts of travellers stop. Stop to go to the toilet, stop to have lunch, stop to photograph these termite mounds, of course. The smaller termite mounds around are all the different species to this particular giant one here. But we're walking back to the car and there's litter on the ground, litter everywhere. And get closer, you can see that larger termite mound on the right. Now, people have to go when they have to go. I understand that. But there's litter everywhere, and it's a shame. But we get back to the car, and I start photographing, well, there's cans of beer. And I'm thinking, well, that's not accidental. That's not having to go to the toilet. Someone with their car or a bunch of blokes were drinking beer, and they just threw the cans on the ground. Oh, that's a little bit careless. And I see litter all along the roadside, and I turn around and I go, well, there's a sign there. What does the sign say? Please keep the area tidy. Next litter disposal is 29 kilometres that way, 54 kilometres that way. But I wonder if someone's eating a tin of sardines or fish and you've just finished it, you don't want to put the sardine tin in your car and the smell and all that. Just throw it out. Why not? I mean, if the government's not going to put a bin here, why should I bother? And I'm not going to drive 50... I understand, but it's a shame. People are just disgusting. It's just, they don't care about the environment, even with the signs. Now, let's move on. Cycads, let's go to Lepidozamia. And then Macrozamia. Not too long, not too many more to go. Lepidozamia, this is a beautiful, soft, shining cycad. Nothing spinescent about it. It's very rubbery. The leaves are rubbery. It's an extremely elegant cycad. There's the stem or the cortex, close up, very... And if you stuck a knife in there, you'd find it's very succulent. And something, when you get close to the petiole, the base of the leaf, it can be very silvery. That's, again, indementum. You can rub it and that white can come off. So there's and long petioles. So the leaves are very long and a good section of it is leafless, like without the leaflets. Again, this is a male reproductive cone, and the male's expired. The reproductive male portion is limp. Female portion still erect and expanding and swelling with seed inside. Massive. This can get to 40 kilos in weight. 40 kilos. Lepidozamia perovskiana. And that's mature. The female now shedding sections, and there's 2 seeds per section. That's a sporophyll with 2 seeds still attached. So that's a megasporophyll. And now Macrozamia communis. I put in the contrast of 2 species to show you how the reproductive cycle is the most important, most significant thing that's observable to identify one species from another. So this is again still Macrozamia communis. So these are female plants, and when they fall to the ground, there's a sporophyll. So the megasporophyll in the top right, you can see 2 seeds are still attached to the sporophyll. And in the lower left, you can see where rodents or animals have eaten away the skin that's edible for animals, poisonous for humans. Now, they're the males. And again, the sexual reproductive parts come and go and last a very short while. There's the female, very spiny, needs to protect the seed inside. That's extremely... Look at the length of those spines. So that's Macrozamia communis. And that's the foliage, very elegant, mostly soft. It's not a bad plant to have in the garden. It comes from a habitat that's, I would call it deep forest, with trees, towering huge trees, and it's very common and widespread. I think it's one of Australia's most widespread and most common cycad species. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Now a blue one from Central Australia, Macrozamia macdonaldii. It comes from a place called Palm Valley. And Palm Valley is an odd place because there's the palm in the valley. Tourists like to go to Palm Valley to look at the palms. But what's odd about it is this is called a red cabbage palm. But there's nothing red about that palm at all until you walk the talk. Amongst these red cabbage palms, when you're on the ground, you'll see that all the juveniles, even though it's called a red cabbage palm, only when you walk the walk do you see that all the juveniles are red. Of course, that's why they call it the red cabbage. Now I know. But there's no indication or signs indicating what else grows in this habitat. But see the palms in the foreground, look in the background, up on the hillside, up on the cliff, up on the ledge, there it is, closer. Most visitors, there's no signs explaining what this is, but there you are, Macrozemia macdonaldii. And down in the base of the leaves, very sharp, these pinnae, the leaflets are very sharp and spiky. And the bottom of the leaflets have the indamentum. You've got not only pronose, you can rub off the blue, but also orange wool down the bottom there. There's the female reproductive cone, beautiful, really vicious, that one. That's Macrozemia morii. It's towering like a palm tree. This is not the tallest species in Australia, but it is the most massive species, and it's very impressive. Macrozemia morii. 2 females, obviously one of them, and a male, Macrozemia morii. Now, Michelle's showing her hand for a size comparison, but these male reproductive cones are numerous. And it's interesting because when they come out, they're initially erect, like the one on the right, but within a week, they go limp. All male reproductive cones do that. They don't last long at all. Now, they're not found on the top of the mountain, and they're not found at the bottom of the mountain. They're only found on the gentle slopes between the flatlands and the mountain range. So that gives you an indication. So that there it is in habitat, and there it is in cultivation. Look at the number of leaves overall. It's got one of the best crowns ever for a cycad. I think it's just incredible. Now, a little bit on cultivation, not much, but this is in cultivation. You've got a blue cycad on the left, that's macdonaldii. You've got Macrozemia communis on the right. Behind it are pandanus. Now, this is a cultivated garden. Those pandanus shed leaves all the time. It's a dry year, drought conditions, and the pandanus are stressing. Now, let's look at the cycads. Are they stressing? No. Have they got leaf litter and shedding? No. So which plant's better to grow in your garden? I know. In cultivation, that's Lepidozemia perovskiana in the background. What a mouthful that name is. But you can see that cycad with a human underneath walking. See the person underneath? That's an ancient plant. It'll probably take you 100 years to get one that big. But in cultivation, some of these Australian cycads, the silver cycad, this one looks artificial. The leaf colour is referred to as turquoise. And if you were to see it and stand before it, you'd want to bow. It is exquisite. Turquoise. Its name, Cycas canalis. And next year, I hope to visit it in habitat, and that's for another publication. I do not have the time to show you other very interesting and attractive Australian cycads, but I can say for certain that I've only shared a sampling to get you excited about them. There are so many more. A little bit about bonsai. They're easy as bonsai in pots. There's one of Michelle's pictures. I love this picture she took. Now, my final little bit of a story goes like this. We're going to look at a habitat and how we go about exploring a habitat. There's a brochure, a dirty old brochure, and it reads, "Welcome to Cooktown." Well, that's in North Queensland, and that's an important brochure because North Queensland, top right, and it's kind of like, notice how the distribution of cycads in Australia are mostly on the east side. Well, this is in the very, very north, and a close-up of that area, and you've got there the town of Cooktown. That mountain in the far right back is Mount Cook, and behind me is a small townlet called Cooktown. It's a very small, only a few thousand residents. But I've walked from the town, and we've walked towards this beach, and there's a sign that says there's a good track if you follow the track. Now, there's a cycas called Cycas media on this mountain I'm standing on, and on that mountain is the Zamia fern, the Bowenia spectabilis. So I want to walk from one habitat to another and see if I can find the two growing together. So on this particular occasion, we followed the track, and it got a bit wild because there I am, and there's Michelle. She's climbed this rock because she's trying to find out where the track leads, because we've got a problem. The track's overgrown. It hasn't been maintained for a few years, and all the indicators were gone, and we're just sort of like scrambling around, and we're getting a little bit troubled by it. But anyway, there I am, taking the picture of Michelle, and right in the front of that rock, there's actually an arrow, yellow arrow I put there, but on the rock was a red marker to say which way to go, and it wrote it off. So we didn't know what to do, but we decided to just scramble our way through the forest and get down to the beach. We had to get to the beach. We kind of like could see it in the distance, and we eventually got there. But it was really hard. So we got down to the beach, and Michelle said, I was at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I said, look, we'll venture around and we'll head back. We'll be in Cooktown. There's a cafe by the seashore, and we'll have fish and chips for lunch, and we'll be there by lunchtime. And Michelle said, I'm getting hungry. Yeah, look, let's plan that. So after wandering along on the beach and having a look for the two Cycads species and exploring the area, we decided to head back. And as we were walking back, we had a problem. We walked from right that far end of the beach, right in the great distance. We found a way through to this point, but initially I have to go back a picture for. Initially, when we were trying to find, the vegetation doesn't look too impenetrable. But let me tell you, there were portions of it that were thick and impenetrable and hard to manage. So as we walked along the beach, we're looking for entry points or easy points. And at one particular point along the beach, I found a little area where you could walk in and it looked like it was sandy and behind some bushes, and there's a bit of litter there. But I found on the ground, you wouldn't believe it, I found a crumpled up old map, a direction of how to get into here and how to get out of here. Wow, I said to Michelle, look at this. I mean, praise the Lord, I said, we will get to lunch on time by 12. Because we'll find our way out instead of how scrambled down that hillside. It looks easy, but it's not, let me tell you. Anyway, so we used a map to guide us out, and we're now out. We're out, and Michelle took this picture just to show, looking back, how we Anyway, here we are, and we're now only about 10 minutes from downtown, and it's a hot day. It's already, I don't know, 30, 40, between 30, I think 35, 36 degrees. And when we just got over that hill, where met our road and walkway down, I'm laying on the ground. Michelle had laid on the ground also in the shadow of a tree. And I didn't realise it, but next to Michelle's handbag, there's actually the map. That's the map I found that was all crumpled up behind a bush. I'm still sitting there. Michelle took this picture because it was hot. It was hot. You can see I'm wearing shorts, and we're a bit sweaty. It was a bit uncomfortable, but as we were going, just before reaching the cafe in the downtown area, there was a mango tree, and there's mango all over the ground, mangoes, and one of them wasn't wrecked by the fruit bats, or no one had taken it, so I started peeling it, and I sat there. I said, this is just wonderful. We find a map along the walk, there's fruit and food along the walk. I said, this is like, I'm in heaven. This is just so fun. Anyway, there's the map, and there's the mango I ate. As petty as this story might sound at the moment, we get to our lunch spot and we order a great meal each, and we're just so excited. And a really weird thing happened. Michelle said, I wonder why that map was just there behind the bush all crumpled up. And she said, you don't suppose someone used it because they needed to go to the toilet? I said, Michelle, I'm trying to have my lunch. Can I have the lights, please? Any questions?
Thank you very much.